Hi boys and girls, it is the creator of Bored with Miss Reynolds, Better Off Reading Every Day. I have a good one for you. It is called Curious George, The Apple Harvest. And I have Curious George back there, and I have my apple, and I have some silly dough. It was harvest time, and Mr. Rankins needed help picking the apples. George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, were happy to lend a hand. Or foot. Mr. Rankin explained that they needed to collect every apple. I'm going to join the missus round back, he said. Once you fill the cart, you can unload it into the washing. Mr. Rankins took his cart full of apples to the barn and dumped them in the water. It must be their bath time, George thought. George climbed up the branches, collected the shiny red apples in his friend's hat, and put them into the cart. What fun! High up in the tree, he saw Jumpy Squirrel picking apples too. George decided to help. He took Jumpy's apple and tossed it in to the cart with the rest of Mr. Rankin's apples. But Jumpy wanted the apple for himself. He leaped in to take it back, and George tried to stop him. Easy now, George. That lever releases all the apples, said his friend. George looked at the lever. He thought it was an excellent way to get Jumpy out of the cart. George, no! George pulled the lever and Jumpy tumbled out along with all the apples. That's okay, said his friend with a sigh. We can gather them up again. But Jumpy had found his apple, and he ran to hide it in the barn. George decided to follow. Too tightly, liquid began to pour out the barrel. What a mess! George had an idea. He ran up and put his mouth under the liquid. It tasted good, a lot like apples, but there was too much of it. Luckily, he saw some empty containers. George scrambled to put the containers on the moving belt fast enough to catch the liquid. Then he looked down at the end of the belt and saw the containers falling onto the floor. Uh-oh! George ran to catch them. Then he needed to stop the machine. Soon he had filled all the containers, but the golden liquid continued to pour out. He looked around for another container and saw a big pair of rubber boots. As the last boot was filled, the liquid stopped pouring out and the machine stopped. Whew, whew. The farmers and George's friend appeared in the doorway. "Well, I'll be," Mr. Rankins exclaimed. George froze. Mr. Rankinses would surely The Rankinses would surely be upset that he ruined all their apples. "George," Mr. Rankins rushed up to him, "you've done a fantastic job. All that cider already pressed and bottled. Thank you." "This is some machine," said the man with the yellow hat. "See, the apples are washed here," Mrs. Rankin explained. "Then they are lifted up to the chopper because chopped apples give more juice. The juice is pressed out of the apples and then bottled." George had not ruined the apples after all. He turned them into cider. Mr. Rankins handed an apple to George. "Here, you've earned it," he said. George knew someone who wanted the apple more than he did. He had enough apples for one day. He's such a good friend. And that is the end, boys and girls, of Curious George Apple Harvest. In the back of this book, it actually has the assembly line. When George accidentally turned on the cider press, he learned how cider is made. This, in each step, a different part of the machine performs a specific task, and when all of the steps are put together, the end result is bottled cider. Just like that, right there. It is B.O.R.E.D with Miss Reynolds, Better Off Reading Every Day. I do not own the rights to this book that I have read to you, but I love storytelling magic. And the magic of today's story is I have George right here. I have my Shopkins apple friend right here. If you have Shopkins and you know them, you'll know the exact name of this apple, and you can send me a message and let me know what it is. George and I are so happy that we are here to share our story of the apple harvest with you. And after this, we are gonna go crafting, and we are gonna use this Silly Scents dough in green apple. And we are going to have some fun. We hope that you will join us, and we will see you again really, really soon, boys and girls. B.O.R.E.D with Miss Reynolds and Curious George and my friend from Shopkins and my book and some dough. It's going to be apples and fun all around right here at B.O.R.E.D with Miss Reynolds. Better Off Reading Every Day. Bye.